Good morning, church. I just want to start back off in prayer, so if you'll bow your heads with me. Father, thank you so much for this Sunday that we get to gather together to worship you, Lord. And Lord, as I get ready to speak, I'm reminded that people don't need me and they don't need my words, but Jesus, we need you. So Lord, I just pray that your presence will be super heavy in this place, Lord. That people who haven't met you yet will meet you today, Lord. And for those who have met you already, Lord, I pray that we're able to leave this place encouraged to keep following after you, Lord. And Lord, it's in your name that we pray. Amen. All right, good morning, church. I know we kind of just did this, but I think it's good to do it again. But tell the person to the left of you and to the right of you, good morning. I'm glad you're here today. All right, not too much time. I know as a church we'll go off with that. But y'all, I just want to start off kind of with just giving God praise. He is so good. And if y'all would have told me 10 years ago that I would be, first of all, kind of at church, that's already a praise. But on church, teaching a message in front of everyone, I would have never believed you. I would have called you a liar. I would have been like, you got the wrong guy. Like, you don't know what I've done. You don't know how unholy I am. But God has made this unholy man holy through his son, Jesus. And he has been rich in mercy. And, so I'm just thankful that I get to be here to kind of share my first Sunday sermon. And I just want to thank y'all for giving me the opportunity to do that. But before we start, youth has taught me that it's good to start with a question. So you're going to share with your neighbors again. This will be the last time. If you don't like talking, this is the last time. But my question is this. What story in the Bible can you relate with? Who is someone in the Bible that is relatable to you? All right, y'all, 3 more seconds. All right, y'all, hopefully there's someone, but the person that I can relate to the most in the Bible is the man possessed with legion. And I know every time I say that, I get some crazy looks, like, Beau, you're either lying or we should be worried about you. That sounds crazy. But I want to show all of us that in one way or another, we can all relate to him. And just a warning, if you don't know the story, it's kind of a crazy one. So is mine. And so we're going to be talking about some crazy stuff. I know it's very vague, but just want to give the warning. So we're going to jump into his story today. So if you have your Bibles, we'll be in Mark 5, and we're going to be starting in the end of verse 2. And if we have to have a title for this message, it is just simply meeting Jesus. And that's kind of how I want to break up the text today instead of going through 1 through 20 just kind of directly. I kind of want to break it up into 3 sections. The first one will be the man before meeting Jesus. The second is the man meeting Jesus. And the third is the man after meeting Jesus. And woven throughout this, I'll be sharing my story with y'all. So, the man before meeting Jesus. A little context before we get into this is that the disciples and Jesus are sailing through the sea on a boat, and this crazy storm happens. And it's really funny. Jesus is actually taking a nap in the boat. And the boat starts getting water in it. The disciples think they're about to die, and they start screaming to Jesus like, Jesus, save us. Why are you sleeping? And Jesus, straight chilling, just wakes up. He rebukes the wind and tells the storm, peace, be still. And there was a great calm. And why I share this with this story is I believe the man possessed with legion would have been in the midst of the storm himself as he was living by the shore. And I believe he would have experienced this heavy darkness, but then the sudden peace of Jesus' words, "Peace be still." So this will lead us into the end of verse 2. And it says this: "A man with an unclean spirit, he lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart, and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones." So there's kind of 8 things I want us to realize about this guy. One is that he was in a great storm before Jesus came. 2, the area he's from, it's kind of confusing. No one's exactly sure. But what we do know is that he's from the Decapolis. And so he was probably a Gentile, and he was for sure probably a non-believer. He was living in a region of people that weren't believing in the Lord. 3, he had an unclean spirit. So this man was uncontrollable. 4, he lived among the tombs. He was already pretty much in his grave. He was as good as dead. 5, he had been bound with shackles and chains. Others tried to subdue him, and people tried to control him. Night and day, he was always crying out. He was on the mountains, isolated by himself. And lastly, he was cutting himself with stones and self-harming. Church, can you relate with this at all? Have you ever gone through a dark, heavy storm in your life where you felt like there was no way out? Have you ever felt like you lived in a place that was far from the Lord? Have you ever felt darkness and unclean spirits around you? Have you ever been in a place where you felt as good as dead, as you were already in your tomb, like a dead man walking? Have you ever tried to have people bind you and control you, maybe with their words or even maybe physically? Have you ever found yourself in a spot where you're crying out day and night and not sure if there's anyone listening? Have you ever been lonely and isolated? Have you ever been so sad or angry that you cut yourself or done any kind of form of self-harm? Church, I can say yes to each of these points. So a lot of my story begins when I was really, really young. My dad has this dream that I wasn't made aware of till late in high school. But he has this dream, and he was told that if he doesn't take his life, this evil spirit is going to come for his family, starting with his oldest son, which is me. So this came to pass in 8th grade. And at the time, my life seemed normal, and it seemed all right. You know, I didn't have faith, but I knew Christianity was probably the right thing, and I would have told you I believed. And my parents at this time had been split up for a long time, and now living with other people. All I really cared about, as most 8th graders probably, is girls and sports. That's where my hope was. That's where my joy was. And I was hoping to one day be in the NBA, which I can tell y'all already, that didn't work out. But at this point, everything started falling apart for me. I was deeply, deeply hurt by my father figures in my life because they had often tried to use physical violence or bullying or just their words to try to control me and almost metaphorically bind me with chains. I was in a bad dating relationship at the time, and this introduced me to a lot of bad stuff I shouldn't have known. I ended up getting a really, really bad concussion at the end of 8th grade, and this lasted a really long time, for months. And this concussion was so severe, they said if it was any worse, it would have been permanent brain damage. So at this point, it just hurt to even be alive. So my hope and my escape seemed to be sleeping. But around this same time, I ended up getting really, really bad demonic dreams where demons were getting me, which led me to even be afraid to go to sleep, and so I was staying up days on end. And eventually, I was also just being picked on at school. So there was no escape and no peace at all. Because of all this, I began to self-harm and almost do it daily. This led me to lose all the little hope I did have in God. I was for sure now a non-believer, feeling so far from God. And it wasn't because God didn't make sense, it just felt like my life was telling another story. I felt alone, I was crying out day and night, and nobody seemed to be listening. I lived in darkness. Darkness was my home. I seemed to be as good as dead. I was left with no hope or will to live. Which brought me to the question, if God was so loving, why would he let me go through this heavy, dark storm? Have y'all ever been in a place where y'all have asked that same question? If God was so loving, why would he let me go through this heavy storm? And this leads us to our next point, the man meeting Jesus. And this text, it says, they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him a man out of the tombs with an unclean spirit. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him. And crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he was saying to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." And Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And he replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And a little side note on that, a legion was a Roman military unit which would be up to 6,000 soldiers. So he's right in saying this, that we are many. And he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him, saying, "Send us to the pigs, let us enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs. And the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the sea. So I know it's kind of long, but my kind of question when I'm reading that is, why did this man run up and fall down at the feet of Jesus? I think it might be maybe that he longed to be free from the legion of demons that he had. But I think most likely it's that when demons are in the presence of the Son of the Most High God, they must fall down and bow before him, who is the greater power and the light of the world. Doesn't matter if it's one demon or thousands of demons like Legion. In the presence of Christ, they don't stand a chance. John 1:5 says, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." I myself have experienced such power and grace and love. To continue my story, I had gotten to the end of my life. I had planned on taking my life my freshman year of high school. And right before I did, I decided to cry out to God one last time, often calling it my final prayer. He had delivered a friend of mine from the same thing. Maybe he could do it with me too. So I prayed, "God, I don't know if you're real or not, but if you are, then don't let this happen. But if you aren't, then hell or whatever can't be much worse than this." And as I got up from my knees, heading to what was going to be my end, with so much darkness around me, I felt someone enter my bedroom, but not through a door. This person stood behind me, and the only way I could describe this feeling is as a light, and it was the best feeling I've ever felt. And in this light, I heard a voice that said to me, "I'm not finished with you yet." And I fell down on my knees, and I just wept. I knew that it was Jesus. If it was any other God, I always had to be in a temple or be somewhere else, but it was Jesus. He loved me when I didn't even love myself or feel that anyone could possibly truly love me. He spoke purpose into my life when I felt meaningless and useless. And I can testify to what John 8:12 says. It says again, Jesus spoke to them, saying, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." The light that I encountered in my bedroom is the same light that this man met on the shore in Mark 5. So, kind of to finish up that part, Jesus ends up casting the demons out of this man to a huge herd of pigs. This sounds kind of weird. It's kind of odd, you know? Well, I think it's kind of cool because the pigs were ceremonially unclean animals in the Old Testament. And so it almost seems fitting that the unclean spirits would enter an unclean animal in an unclean region. What's crazier is that they made the pigs jump off the cliff and 2,000 pigs drowned. This is kind of the part of the story that sounds weird, but I don't think it's a coincidence at all. The enemy knows his final destiny. Revelation 20:10 says that the enemy will be defeated and that Satan will be thrown down into the lake of fire. And so these demons, what they're really doing is foreshadowing what their final destiny will be. Which leads us into the part of the man after meeting Jesus. It says the herdsmen fled and told it in the city and in the country. And people came to see what it was that had happened. And they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man, I think one of the best parts of all Scripture, who had the legion sitting there, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. And they began to beg Jesus to depart from their region. As a little side note, we don't know why exactly, but I'm thinking it's because they lost a lot of bacon. You know, their economy, that was a lot of money probably into 2,000 pigs. And so their economy's probably shot, and it probably cost some people. But as we see, Jesus prioritizes people and saving one man over them. But back to the text. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed with the demons begged him that he might be with him. And Jesus did not permit him, but said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy on you." And the man went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And everyone marveled. So I think this little part right here of Mark 5:14-20 has something for every single person here to take away. And I'm kind of going to hone in on 3 verses. But if the band wants to come up, and those who are doing cardboard testimonies, prepare in the prayer room. The first point is healed and delivered. He was sitting there, clothed and in his right mind. The text says that the man who had legion, who I think might be around 2,000 demons, was feared by all people in that region. He was living in darkness. He was naked, cutting himself, living in a tomb. And that man was sitting there clothed and in his right mind. A definite miracle had taken place that no one could deny. And what's really cool is if you read the whole chapter of Mark 5, it's going to tell you 3 stories. And I think it's probably my favorite chapter in all of the Bible. The first story is the man that we just read about that Jesus healed from legion. The second is Jesus is going to heal and save a woman who had bled for 12 straight years. And this woman had spent every single dollar she had on doctors, on remedies, and anything that the world could offer her. She tried it, and nothing worked. She had lost all hope. And Jesus healed and saved and ended up raising a religious leader's daughter from the dead. So what we get from this chapter and from those 3 stories is that all these people had 0 hope left and seemed way too far gone. There's nothing that no human or no person could do to try to help these people. They seem to be gone to the uttermost, but Jesus can save to the uttermost. And I'm a testimony to this too. I remember after giving my life to Jesus, I started tweeting Bible verses a lot and really trying to be a light as much as I could. And I remember getting some DMs or people texting me and just being like, "Beau, it's so encouraging to see your walk with Jesus," or "It's so awesome. You were the bad kid, and now you love Jesus." And I didn't know to be offended or not, but I'll take it as a compliment. I was that kid who was too far gone. I was that kid that no one could save and that parents told their kids to stay away from me. But Jesus saved me, and I was now sitting there clothed and in my right mind. And the point is this: Jesus can save the man with legion. He can save the woman who bled for 12 years. He can save the dead daughter of the religious leader. He can save me, and he can even save you. You are never too far gone. In Hebrews 7:25, this promise that we should cling to says this: "Consequently, he is able to save to the uttermost those who draw near to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them." So if you don't know the Lord today, draw near to God through Jesus, and he is way more able to save you. He is greater than any sin you can commit, and he will forgive you for everything. 2, next point, is that Jesus came just for that man. He was getting into the boat. And to be honest, when I started writing my message and trying to plan this part out, this was the only part I could not write very well at all. And it's crazy because then Isaiah comes up here, preaches a good message. It's almost word for word everything I was going to say. That I was trying to plan but couldn't find the right words. Is that Jesus, that he was chasing after this man, the man who seemed to be way too far gone, the craziest and worst man in that entire area of the world. That's the man Jesus went after. And as I was kind of praying about this part, all I really felt like God was trying to tell me was that he wanted me to tell y'all that Jesus sees you. And I don't know where that may apply or where you're at in life, or what's that thing that's the darkest thing that you hold on to that you may not show anyone else, or that part where you are just sitting all by yourself and it feels like you are all alone. Jesus says that he sees you. And it reminded me, God brought this back to my mind as I was preparing this, that after a little while after I gave my life to Jesus and I already had been following him, I was still kind of wrestling with, why was I all alone in those moments? And Jesus gave me a vision. And in this vision, I remember I'm just watching myself in my room, and I'm back just on the edge of my bed sitting there, and it's back to a moment of me harming myself and self-harming and cutting myself. And I'm just sitting there weeping, feeling so alone. But this time I noticed I actually wasn't alone. I saw this time on the other side of my bed, Jesus was sitting there weeping too. And what Jesus was showing me was that he was always with me. I was actually never alone. Even when it felt alone, I was crying out and I couldn't feel anything or felt like anyone heard, he was actually there with me the entire time. And that, like, in my darkest moment, he was there. And what was crazy was that he was weeping with me. What hurt me was hurting him even before I committed my life to him. He loved me so much. And kind of not only that Jesus is with us in those moments, but Jesus is also seeking after you. As Isaiah said, if he's the great shepherd, and if he has 100 sheep and 99 stay there and one goes astray, he will go after that one sheep, because that one sheep is so precious to him, even if it looks like it has no value and has nothing to offer him. And so what I want to say is that Jesus went through all this work to save the most unclean, worst person in that entire region. And I promise he's going through so much to do the same for you. That he wants to help you, he wants to heal you, and he wants to save you right now. And maybe for this last point, maybe you're like, Beau, I already kind of know those two. I've known Jesus for a while, and he has already done those things in my life. Well, then we get the same command that this man got in the text. The command to testify. Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. I remember when I first gave my life to Jesus, I was just like, Jesus, just take me now. If I'm going to be with you in heaven, why go through all of this? I feel like I'm just waiting. And he didn't, obviously. But I was like, why live here on earth if I could be with you now? And it was because he was not finished with me yet. He wants me to share of what he's done and how he had mercy on me. And the command is the same for you, church. He's not finished with any person in this room. That's why you still have breath in your lungs. He's not done with you. And he wants you to go and share to others what he has done, no matter how big or how small it is. And there are people who don't know Jesus yet, but they are longing for him and don't know what that longing is. And just maybe he might be sending you back to the very people that try to chain and bind you down like this man in Mark 5. And what's crazy is this man is sent with no training. He literally didn't spend a full day with Jesus. He didn't go to seminary. He didn't have to study. He just had to share his story of meeting Jesus. And church, this is how we overcome the enemy and darkness, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimonies. And so today, church, this is exactly what the youth and I are going to do. We're coming before our friends and our family at church today with our testimonies written on cardboard to share what Jesus has done in our lives, how he had mercy on us. And so I'm going to lead for us today. Ooh.